Anyone who's sawn lumber for any length of time and says they haven't hit a log stop is probably not telling the truth.
All right, so you wake up in the morning, you go out to your mill. What's the first thing you do? We're gonna be putting this thing together and putting it through its paces right away. But before we get into that, we're gonna put the trailer together. We've got woods all over the place, bush all over the place, and a trailer only makes sense. But we'll slap this together, not too complicated. Make it square, make it straight, and make sure all your nuts and bolts are tight. Here we go. All right, so we are back at Andy's neighbor's, who has a pile of wood for us. So nice that it's mobile, basically just resetting it so it's kind of level. We're gonna cut as much wood as we can. And we're actually going to cut some wood for Kevin's wagon. So all that custom sized wood, that actually works out perfect for this little girl, because you can't just go to the mill and say, I want 3-inch wide by 8 inches tall or whatever for the runners on the hay wagon. So
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Not bad?
Good enough.
Good enough. Hey, aren't you that YouTube?
I might be. I took a wrong turn back here, and well, I guess I found the right spot.
Yeah. Sandy, right?
Yeah, that's right. Rich, nice to meet you. Yeah.
Are you busy for like next couple
yeah, I think we can swing something. Sure, we can. Sawing wood, I'm in.
Right, so we'll level this up and then let's go over the whole machine because it's brand new. We cut one pine log. I want to make sure that we're doing it right, and then we can cut some white oak for Kevin's hay wagon.
That sounds great.
All right, so you wake up in the morning, you go out to your mill. What's the first thing you do?
I get my sludge. So aside from sawing, I make sure I got my coffee, my sludge. And assuming that's okay and I've got a backup, then I come to the sawmill and make sure there's fuel, just like every engine, make sure there's oil in it.
Yeah, so we got oil. I've got no leaks. I checked it this morning. It has 2 hours on it now. So we've worn in our engine. We used it for 20 minutes with no water, so that you work the belt.
The belt,
right?
Yeah.
And this caught my eye, but that's the way.
Yeah, that's supposed to ride loose like that. I usually check to make sure there's no buildup of like hard dust on the belts. That'll happen with time. And yeah, I get rid of that. I make sure the exit hole there is open. You get bark sometimes sticking. It builds up with sawdust and it'll kick the blade. This is normally back here, and then there's a little nut or a bolt that goes in there. This is just your blade guide. Aside from that, you know, this is a new sawmill, but I always check the bearings with the blade untensioned, and we're assuming everything's good, brand new mill. Make sure I have lubrication in it.
So what do you do at the, like, you just run water? But
yeah.
It gets cold in Canada.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Water's done now. So last night back home, -6 Celsius. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's cold. And so the water's gone. I run straight washer fluid. So that's, yeah, I run that all winter long. I'll come up here and I'll just press this, and then you can see the lubrication come out, and I'll just watch to see how much comes out. And assuming I'm happy with it, I'll start it. But assuming I'm not, then I'll adjust the amount of lubrication there.
And you just want steady drips on there.
Yeah, it depends what I'm sawing. Like when I'm sawing like red pine, white pine, it's got a lot of pitch in it, so I'll put more lubrication. Pitch will cause friction, and then friction will cause heat. And if you get too much heat in the blade, you can actually cause the blade to expand slightly, and that drops your tension. So I keep enough water to keep the blade cool. So after I'm done cutting, I'll just put my hand on it after I'm done cutting. And then
with the machine off.
Exactly, safe. And assuming the blade's not hot, I know I'm probably in good shape for lubrication.
If it's steaming while the water's running on, it's too hot.
Too much. Yes, best practice is to take the tension off the blade, unless you're going to be just leaving it for a short time, like a few hours, and then you're having lunch and coming back. But if you're leaving it overnight, the idea is you untension the blade and then you retension it the next day. So I think we basically just choke it, turn the fuel on, and this is a electric start, so we can fire it right up. One thing that I will mention, it is getting colder here. On this side of the air filter, you can actually rotate it. And this is common with these small engines. You'll see there's the snowflake symbol. This is for heat. So basically, if you want heated air going into the air filter, so in the wintertime, you have the arrows line up. And then in the warmer months, you have these arrows line up the sun.
I'm pretty chilly already and I'm gonna forget. So let's put it on the snowflake.
That's
and
right.
Leave it there. What's this little guy for?
So that will prevent you from inadvertently hitting the log stops. Mine's folded up right now.
So you want it,
Typically it'd be down, yeah.
I see.
If you forget to drop these log stops down, when you're rolling the saw through, it hits the log stop. But anyone who's sawn lumber for any length of time and says they haven't hit a log stop is probably not telling the truth, because I have. And it's because I didn't have that down. So keep it down. You just gotta be careful with this being in this position. Every once in a while, if this wasn't tight, this could creep back. You don't want to get into your blade. So you just gotta make sure it's in position and tightened. And that way you can safeguard yourself from the log stop. And you can also make sure you don't damage a blade. One thing about that blade I'll mention as well, if that blade starts to show signs of getting dull, if it feels like there's any resistance, I switch it immediately, because you might end up ruining a piece of lumber. If it starts getting dull, the blade will start to creep on you.
Yeah.
And obviously the lumber being valuable, you don't want it to go to waste. So I switch it sort of proactively.
And as you're pushing it, what are you listening for? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'm listening for what the engine wants, essentially. So if the engine is telling me it's had enough, that means I'm maybe pushing too fast, so I let the blade cut. Just like with a table saw or a miter saw or something, when you're cutting, you can feel resistance. You don't want to push to the point where there's resistance, because that means you're either pushing too fast or your blade's too dull. And depending on the situation, you'd slow down or switch the blade out to a sharp one.
Say you start getting out of level, what are the telltale signs? You just start cutting crooked wood, or?
Wow. Yeah, definitely that is something that happens. If you start to see waves in the lumber, one of the things it could be is your blade's going dull, but it could also be something related to your sawmill being level. Usually the indicator for me when I'm moving the saw head down the track, if one of the four wheels stops turning, that means to me that it's no longer touching the top of the rail here. So it's probably dipped down in one way or another. So then I'll get out the level again and I'll make sure everything's nice and level and good to go that way.
Okay. I think that's it. You gonna cut some wood?
Yeah.
Right on.
Don't have to ask me twice. One thing that we'll do is just check to make sure there's as little dirt in the bark as possible. Obviously the bark has been long gone, but if there is any that we can get rid of, that'll keep the blade sharp.
So what do you find works best?
I use an old brush.
Like a windshield brush?
Or like use that.
Wire wheel?
Like a brush for cleaning the shop. Sometimes I'll use an actual push broom. Depending the time of year, if it's winter, you're better off because there's no dirt to get in the bark. But any brush you can use. I've also used a blower, like a backpack blower. Before we start, I'll take a tape measure and I'll measure how high the log stops are, just so when I'm setting the height, I don't cut them. The other thing, we just push the blade guide in as close to the log as it'll go. Yeah.